Hey guys, you've seen the thumbnail and you know what this one's about. This video is the Losi Lasernut brutal review, and you know, this has been months in the making. We don't do a brutal review until we've thoroughly run a vehicle, and it's got to be at least 4 months old out of the box for the channel, and this one way goes beyond that. It's got to have a minimum of 12 battery sets run through it. That way we can really tell if the running gear is going to do what it's supposed to. And it has to make at least one group event to see how it competes with other cars, and this one now qualifies for all of those points. In this video, we're going to go over what we did in the car to get it to be what it is today, the weaknesses, the strengths, and at the end, you're going to find out where it stacks up in the collection. Will this thing make it back into the top 10? With the modifications, we'll find out today. But before we do, let's get a look at that running footage. Check this out. Okay, so there's the running footage for the Lasernut, and we've had a lot of fun with this car. This thing is really quick out of the box, but if you look at it right off the bat, you'll notice we have a difference in tires here, and we switched that right away. And we're only talking about that first because it is basically the elephant in the room. And what we did was we swapped it from these, and if you look at the original video, you'll notice that this is the tire set that it comes with, and we put these on it. Now, this particular brand of tire is not overly important. It's the size and the width of the tire that we were looking for. I found a deal on these at the local hobby store. I don't even have the tag for these anymore. And they were a killer deal, and I got like 8 sets of these. Okay, so we've used these on several cars, and they don't always work that well, but on this one, with the V-rib chevron design on them, they have a tendency to scurf in the corners a little more. It lets it slides a little better. It handles on the oval track better, but I'm sure there's better tires out there. The idea here is big tire, smaller tire, better control. Now this one absorbs the ground better, but it does have an issue, and I'll get you a close-up of this. Right in the back where the hex drive is, you'll notice that there's only like 1/8 of an inch of depth here. So the original area that the hub connects to is right here, but the collar that goes around it is super thin, and it takes almost nothing to strip one out. Have a good look at that. This is stripped out, and it was easy to do because it's not nearly as deep as this one, which is at least 3 times as deep. It holds the hub a lot better, and even if it loosens a little, it sits in there enough to where you can tell it's loose and tighten it up before it destroys the wheel. Now these ones, these are the rock bouncer style that come with it, and they're a cool looking tire. This is what comes with it, but it raises the center of gravity, and keep in mind that's what the vehicle's made for. But that's not really what we were into with this, so we swapped it over to more of a mud buggy racer style of tire, and I like the look of that better. It seems to sit it a lot nicer, and we put a wing on the back. Now, there's supposed to be a tire back there as well, so it's 5 tires on the vehicle, and that adds a lot of weight. I mean, these aren't super light, so it adds all this weight to the back of the truck, and I really didn't care for that so much. Basically, this is the Tenacity platform, which is the DB Pro or the TT Pro chassis design, but this one's longer. And the nice thing about being longer is it does make it quite a bit more stable. But beyond that, let's talk about specifics for a minute. Now, for the radio gear, this came out of the box with the DX3, and I love this radio. For RTRs, this is a really good one. And if you've seen the channel, you know I've talked a lot about these, but it's got the AVC control here. It's got onboard brake controls, full brakes, dial them back, make it customizable on the fly for whatever you need to do on the track or in nature, whatever. You have your, right here, you can set the centers on both of your speed control and your steering. It's got reversing here, and the nice feature is it's got 50, 75, and 100% throttle reduction. This allows you to turn it down for an inexperienced driver and let them drive the car without having it maxed at 100% where they can just destroy stuff, because this car does go fast enough to wipe things out. Also, it's got a bind button right here. There's another channel here you can assign, and it's got the on switch here. It feels really good in the hand, and all of the spring tensions feel real good. All in all, this is an awesome radio. I probably have 10 of these, and I love these. These are easier to control on the outset, especially if you're not somebody that's well versed in this, than say the DX5C or the DX5 Rugged, where you have to get into the menu, you have to understand exponential and all this other stuff to set it up the way you can do with that one pretty quickly. So if you're new to the hobby, this one's simpler to get running than say this one. This one, read the manual, guys, because this one requires some special setup. And when you get in the menu here, there's a whole bunch of stuff you may not understand, and this little touchpad on the back can be a little frustrating at times. None of that applies to this one. Easy sync situation, and it works really good in the hand. It's just a good radio gear. Alongside of that, we want to go ahead and talk about the motor. Now, this motor is fast. It's really quick, it's strong, it doesn't overheat. Not nearly as bad with the smaller tires on it than the big ones that come with it, because when you put the smaller tires on it, it does gear it down some, so you get more torque, less high end, but that motor spins up enough to where it's still plenty fast. Alongside that, we're still running the stock servo, which is an S614, and this right here is the 130 amp Spectrum speed control. And that's worked perfectly from day one, and we've completely submerged this car. Now, I was trying to find the footage of us hitting this puddle and having it go completely out of sight and then driving out the end of the puddle, but I couldn't find the footage. Trust me, that happened, and the problem is we did wind up changing the receiver over to another 6-channel, and we had to do that. Well, right away when we came out of the puddle, everything worked good, and it worked for over a month. The problem is, nothing's really waterproof. It's water resistant, and that's the thing. That'll handle puddle splashes and rinsing off and stuff like that just fine. And this particular car, this is mounted on the side of the servo. It's not mounted in a box. So direct deflection and stuff is one thing. With that particular receiver out in the open, the water resistance is really tested. Well, when we completely submerged the car, the water got completely inside of that module, and it functioned. The coating they have on everything works, but you only have to have one small area where that coating's been rubbed or it's just not 100%, and corrosion can take place. After about a month, the receiver failed to work anymore. It was completely blown, and I know what caused it. So I don't fault the receiver for that. I fault the driver, that's me, for destroying that. So I'm not going to count against the car on that one, because that was a direct result of my ignorance when I completely submerged it without a fairly waterproofed radio box. And even though you dry the car inside there, it holds on to the moisture, and it can create corrosion, and corrosion can cause parts to fail, especially in an electronic situation. But alongside that, we did more than that. If you take a look here, and I'll get you a close-up of this, you'll notice that front and rear, we put the DB Pro outdrive hub carriers on the front and the rear with the aluminum C carriers, because we broke those quite a bit. These don't always hold up very well, especially if you come down on the side. Even with the stock wheels and tires, it had an issue with this. So swapping those is good. I've noticed we still have a broken arm on here, and that will be the 3rd set we've broken. So we've had to replace these a few times. These are really nice and pretty simple to replace, but it's aggravating. I wish they were a bit more flexible, something that would hold up a little bit better. Overall though, it's a pretty good build, and it handles good, and it's really quick. So this right here, I love this feature here. The body stays right where you want it. It goes down in place, 2 pins, the body stays good. That's a pretty cool feature, and it's a really cool looking truck, which says a lot. With that behind us, let's talk about the pros and the cons for the car for a moment. And you know, this is a really cool vehicle, and I've said that before because I really do believe it. In this one right here, I've got a list here, and I'm just going to go down it just so I don't miss anything, because this is kind of what we've had to change on the car, and we'll talk about how it handles and whatnot. But at the beginning, what we wound up changing, and this is just straight off the list, so I got to read this as I go to get it right. We've changed out to aluminum front and rear hub carriers, including the C carrier in the front, just because those are kind of a weak component. Now keep in mind, these components come straight off of the DB Pro, which is their race version, but the parts are interchangeable, at least on the carriers and whatnot, so that stuff can be changed over pretty easily. And the cost is relatively expensive. We were running about $42.95 per segment, and these are the receipts for each one, and it takes 3 if you're going to do the hub carriers, front and rear, and the C carrier. It takes 3 of them, and they're about $40-some a piece. So do the math on that. We're over $130 roughly, give or take, for just the carriers, and that's an add-on to the cost of the car. Also, we wound up changing the tires. And depending on where you can get them, you might be able to get a full set for 50 bucks. You might be a little more than that, might be a little less, depending on where you get them and what you choose. But when you choose on your tires, try to keep your weight similar. Size notwithstanding, if you put a lot more weight out on the ends there, it makes the car a lot more fragile. And with the breakage that we've had overall, we really can't afford that extra weight out there because they don't hold up to the weight that it was designed with. Also, we did change out the wing. This is something we did on our own. And the weight block here, if you take a look here, and I'll get you an undershot of this. This is the block that holds the tire. We simply flipped it over and we put the 3S Typhon wing on it from Arma, and we had to drill 2 holes right here to hold it in place, and then we put 4 hefty zip ties on it because only one set of those holes lined up properly. So we just zip tied it down. We've had 0 problems. It's taken lots of endos and corkscrews, and it stays in place really nice. So that was good. Overall, not counting the rebuild on the differential, and we really shouldn't have had to do that. But we do have the TT Pro, which has the same diff in it, and that one held up perfectly. So I think I just got a bad one. I wouldn't really say that's probably industry standard that everyone's gonna fail, but that one certainly did. But I wanna stop and talk about the battery box for a minute. And this is kind of an interesting thing here. So I'll get this up as close as I can for you. I'll get you a close-up if I can't get close enough here. But if you take a look, this has a nice rectangular coffin style battery box, and it's 4-sided, which limits the amount of space that you have for your battery. Now we run slightly longer batteries. They're a little bit bigger, so they wouldn't go in here. So we trimmed out this end and we made it open. Now most of your impacts are forward, and we haven't had any battery shifting issues this way. But we trimmed out the end of the box here, which allowed us to get the larger batteries in it, and it fits under the body just fine. But that's something I don't understand why they would limit it. I know this is supposed to be rugged and take hillsides and bounces and all that kind of thing, and it does that real well. But the battery box really limits the battery size. So if you get one of these cars, don't be surprised if your batteries don't fit. You may have to do some customization to it, or you might be forced to simply buy new batteries. And the externals on the car, the body, it held up really nice. There's no major breakage on that. The front bumper, the rear end, everything held up good. No breakage in that. The shock absorbers all work like they're supposed to. No leakage anywhere, no damage. We didn't bend any shafts. We didn't tear any of the lower units off, the connectors for the shocks down in the arms. None of that had a problem. The sway bars here, front and rear, those are still in perfect shape. All of the drive axles are still straight within the car. The top brace, still in great shape. And the chassis is still straight with the kind of running that we put on this car. That's kind of surprising because we jumped it big and we did some nature running and we ran it into all kinds of stuff. And it held up good. Here's the thing, when we started breaking arms, it wasn't from big jumps. I mean, I lost a wheel on a big jump because here's the thing. When you're running these things, and most of these cars apply the same deal, turn the gyro off if you're going to get off the ground with it. And the reason for that is the gyro senses the direction of the car. That's what it's designed to do, and it turns the wheels to counter motion so it keeps it nice and straight. When you get it up in the air, the gyro doesn't know what to do, and it starts waggling the tires to try and straighten the car out, but there's nothing to connect it to. Once these get rotation, it creates centrifugal energy, and as these move, like so and like so, it changes the trajectory of the vehicle because that centrifugal action creates weight that changes the way the car sits depending on the way they turn. Now the thing is, you get it off the ground and say you're going to jump 14, 15, 20 feet, you're 4 or 5 feet off the ground, you can see the car do this. That's the gyro. So what you do is, turn the gyro knob all the way off. It's this one at the end. Turn it all the way off, and then it only gets the input that you give it, and the tires won't get out of pocket. It'll jump straight and true unless you mess with it. So if you're doing small jumps, if you're staying close to the ground, that's not such a thing. But when you get any type of time in the air, that's when the gyro flips out and the tires start to do their thing, and these get out of pocket. And that's what happened. We hit the vortex ramp, and when it came down, it came down on its side and it blew one of those wheels out. Now, we showed you what the wheel looks like. It's not a lot of mass there, and it completely ruptured one of those in the hub. Didn't break any of the arms, but when we got out to the track, come off a small one, land a little stupid because, well, look at it this way. We're not trying to go 100 miles in the air. Small jumps. Come off one, land sideways, broken arm. Came over another one, landed on the nose a little bit, broken arm. So it's not high impact that's breaking them, it's just awkward landing. Now, most of these cars have enough of flexibility in these arms to handle that kind of stress and strain, especially with a nice light tire and such a narrow wheelbase as far as side to side goes, that they can handle that. But this one seems to fall short a little bit. Now, if you think about it, this is basically built like the DB Pro, which is a track machine. It's not really designed for all-out bashing. And this reflects that. If you want a hardcore bashing vehicle, this is not it. You're gonna have to put quite a bit of money into it to make this a basher, but it is a high performance vehicle. Losi makes high performance vehicles. That's what they do. So for what it is, it works really well. If you stay in the genre that the Rock Bouncer's designed for, or Rock Racer, whatever they call that, it does really good in that application, the center diff notwithstanding. Okay, so it does do all of that really well, but when you take it out of its element and you try to make it something it's not, parts are gonna pay because they keep the weight down to make it what it's supposed to be, and they don't build it super heavy to make it something it's not supposed to be. So by the time you get this upgraded, I'm still looking for some nice flexible front and rear arms for this that are not quite as brittle as these. Like I say, this one's here, still broken, and I'm waiting for the parts to come in to fix it as we speak. But at the same time, if we could get some plastics made by, RPM makes really limber arms, and they've treated me real well over the years. If they could make arms for this, then the arms would flex instead of snapping. This would be one really tough truck, but until I can find something like that, this is still gonna be a little on the fragile side. Also, last thing I'd ever want to do here is put aluminum on the arms, because the arms need to flex. If you put aluminum on there, all of the impact rating from the tire here is going to go directly into the bulkhead. That means all that leverage is going to pull against the bulkhead, and it's going to cause failure deep in the car. You want the arm to fail before anything else does, because that's an easy replacement part, and it gets really convoluted and expensive when you start digging into differential housings and things like that. So if we can get some sort of arm on here that's a lot more flexible, and hey guys, if you know of a set that is more limber than this, that fits right on there, that everyone could benefit from, feel free to put that in the comments down below and help everyone watching this, because this is a common issue for all of us. Still, at the same time, that's pretty much what we've got on this car at the moment, and that only leaves our 4 questions. Here they come. Question number 1, is this thing fun? Well, yeah, it's fun. It's a Losi. It's gonna have some performance to it. It's gonna do what they design it to do. But at the same time, every time we've taken this thing out, it's come back broken in one form or another, albeit, you know, it could be a hub carrier, it could be the arms, it could be the differential. The chassis is good. Overall, the shocks were awesome. The body, the design of everything internally was good. But the out parts, the weak points, the arms and the hub carriers, those, at least for the application we're doing, and keep in mind, we're bashers here, so bashing is what we tested on, but we also run it in track-like conditions to be sure that it can handle that as well. Changing out the tires, with you get rid of these tires here, and these have a lot more give to them, which might help with the arms staying intact a little better. Put something with a smaller sidewall on it, something that's a little more rigid. These right here could contribute to the arm issue because they're not quite as soft. However, at high speeds, these don't swell as much either, so it's kind of a trade-off. As far as the fun goes, you can't get fully into it because, well, you can't help it. You wind up thinking you're gonna break it at some point, so you never get fully into it. So for that reason, this one's only gonna get 6 out of 10 for fun. But once we get those arms swapped out to something more durable where you can run it with reckless abandon, I see it crawling up in that category. And question 2, is it durable? Well, we kind of just went over that with the first question. You know, is this thing durable? Well, not overly so. The internals on the car, the differentials on the front and the rear, those are pretty durable. And I think I just got a mismanufactured one in the center because I have the same differential in the TT Pro and it holds up fine at full pin. So I'm thinking that perhaps I just got a bad one, but at the same time, overall, every time we took this out, it came back broken. That being the case, this, as it sits with the upgrades, is only going to get 7 out of 10 for durability, because if you're afraid to break it, it's not going to be that much fun to run. And question number 3, is it worth the money? Well, you know, $540 is a lot to spend for a car like this. It is really cool and it's got some neat features to it, the way the body works, the way the electronics on it work. It's all pretty cool stuff, but look at the upgrades we had to do, and keep in mind that for value, in order to make it somewhat durable, you're going to jack at least $150, $200 more into it. And if you put that kind of money into it, you're looking at $750 for this vehicle. And we still haven't solved the arm problem yet. That's still an issue. We're getting ready to be on our 4th set of arms, and that's a lot. We don't get too out of pocket, we don't skate park, we don't intentionally run it into stuff that we know is going to break it. This is average, everyday, get after it kind of use. And like I say, we're on our 4th set of arms already, and we've gone through 2 sets of hub carriers before we got these ones. So as far as that goes, that's a lot of money to throw at one of these. But keep in mind that if that works for you, if that's your game, if you really like that and it's in your genre, or you're not afraid to run it in the genre that it's built for, this could be worth every penny to you. If you like this car, by all means, get one. Just be aware of what you're going to have to put into it. We here at the channel, we don't tell you what you need to get. We don't tell you any of that stuff. You get to decide for yourself. All we do is run it the way the average user in our group will run it, and we tell you what happens with the car, and we let you decide. That's the important bit. For me, is it worth the money? I really love Losi, and I like the look of that. It's real close to the DB Pro, but this one's a little longer, it's a little more stable, and if I can get the arm thing figured out, we're going to be in great shape. So as far as, is this worth the money? For me, I'm going to say yes, it's worth the money, because one, I have a thing for Losi, because I guess it's just because I raced them for so long. I love the look of the car. I like the way it performs. Once I squatted it down to the ground, put the smaller tires on it, and added the wing, I love the look. I like the convenience of being able to get the body open the way it is. For that reason, well, before I get to that, if this is what you want, I say yes, it's worth the money. If this is something you're going to get as a basher and you want to take it out and fly it big and you want to see all that stuff go, I'm going to say it's not, because it's not a basher. This is a performance vehicle. It's designed for that. So balancing those two together, as far as is this worth the money, we're going to give it 7 out of 10 for value, because on one side, you have to really be into it to appreciate it. On the other side, it's not quite as durable as it should be. They got a lot of parts right, but they got a few things wrong as well. And question number 4, where does this stack up in our collection? Will this make it into the top 10 now that it's got all the modifications on it? Well, guys, it's real close, but we have a huge amount of cars for our channel anyway. When you get 30 plus, and we're getting real close to 40 here, that top 10 is a relatively coveted position. Now keep in mind that we don't rate them by which one's the absolute best. We don't, all the greatest specs, the fastest cars, that's not how that works here. The way we rate them is, if we have 10 cars to take, we're gonna be gone for a weekend and we're gonna go out and bash with our friends. The top 10 are the cars we'll take with us, regardless of how cool or super or any of that thing a car is. These are the 10 that turn us on the most out of what we have here. As far as that goes, until we can get that arm figured out, the arm issue, the braking in the front, every time it goes out, it gets broken. Until we can get that solved, I hate to say it, but this one's not even gonna crowd its way into the top 10. As a matter of fact, it's all the way down at 15. But keep in mind that we have all these to choose from, all those to choose from, and in the other studio we have more, and each one has its own charms. This one here, it's super cool, and if we're going to the track, it's definitely one I'd want to take with me. But if we're going out in nature, which we do a lot, or we're going out into rough terrain, this is one I would definitely want to leave on the shelf until we get that sorted out. So if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. It's awesome when you do, and I mean that. And don't forget that notification bell to stay informed of upcoming videos like this one. You know, I really look forward to these brutal reviews. It takes a long time and a lot of running to actually qualify for one. And this one has been an utter blast to do. It still has work that needs to be done to it, but as it stands right now, and we may do another review once we get the arm problem fixed, but as it stands right now, this one was an utter scorcher to play with, and it got us to understand a little bit more. Built more like a race car than a basher. In its place, this is a really cool and strong machine. So if you guys have a Losi Lasernut that you've done modifications to that you think are cool or not so cool, please feel free to leave it in the comments down below and help others along the way. Hey guys, I'm AJ with AJ Jam Studios saying, keep bashing, guys.